My husband spent years tearing me down, calling me useless and acting like I'd be nothing without him. So I waited. Quietly. Patiently. I saved every dollar I could, and the day he lost his job, I walked out with all the money in our accounts. Now he's broke, unemployed, and crashing at his mom's house. He still calls me dozens of times a day, sometimes 30, but I don't answer anymore. I first met Robert at this local bar downtown called O'Malley's, the spot everyone from work heads to on Friday nights. I was there with a few coworkers from the insurance office where I worked as an admin assistant. He approached me with that easy confidence, bought me a White Claw, and started talking about his important job in middle management at Midwest Manufacturing. He had this charm that made me feel like I was the only woman in the room, like out of all the people there, he'd chosen me. We dated for 2 years before getting married. My friends thought I was moving too fast, especially Kira, my best friend since high school, but I was convinced Robert was the one. Looking back now, the red flags were practically waving in my face. He was the one who pushed to merge our finances right away, saying, "That's what married couples do." He'd laugh and joke that it was a good thing I had him to handle the money, otherwise I'd blow it all at Target. Everyone laughed with him, and back then I did too. But once our accounts were combined, the jokes started cutting. When I came home with groceries, he'd glance at the receipt and scoff. $7 for organic milk? This is why I check the statements. When I got a small raise at work, he said, "Well, it's not like your management material, but that's cute. They gave you something." And when I mentioned applying for a promotion, he smirked and said, "That's not really your lane, babe. I make enough for both of us." Every insult was followed by a lazy, "I'm just teasing," or, "You know I love you." And I believed him, because that's what I thought marriage looked like. My parents had the same kind of dynamic. My dad always made jokes at my mom's expense, about her cooking, her weight, her hobbies. I thought that was normal. But things started shifting about 2 years ago. Robert began coming home later and later. At first it was 7 p.m. instead of 6, then 8. He'd smell faintly of beer, or sometimes of that sample cologne they hand out at the mall. When I asked, he'd brush it off with, "Just drinks with the guys," or "client dinner, nothing big." Then he'd chuckle and say my jealousy was cute, and that I should stick to worrying about whether we were out of La Croix. Our intimacy took a hit too. He stopped initiating unless he was drunk, and when I tried, he'd make comments about my body. Never straight-up insults, just observations, feeling worthless. He'd poke my stomach and joke, "You've got that little pooch thing going on," or say, "Your boobs look different since you gained a bit of weight." For reference, I'm 5'6" and 145 pounds, basically the same as when we met, but that didn't matter to him. Eventually I started pulling away, and he used that against me. "This is why men cheat," he'd mutter while scrolling through Instagram. He never admitted to cheating, but he didn't exactly deny the idea either. Last summer, I noticed our savings account balance wasn't where it should be. When I brought it up, Robert snapped, "Are you spying on me now? Don't you trust me? I'm the one making the real money here." He slammed the door so hard that one of the framed photos we'd hung together fell off the wall. That night, while he slept soundly beside me, I grabbed my phone and logged into our bank account. There were withdrawals, nothing massive, but consistent, usually on Fridays, $200 to $300 each time. Over months, it had added up to thousands. The next day at work, I mentioned it to Oliver, the guy in the cubicle next to mine who's always talking about stocks and crypto. "That sounds sketchy," he said. "You should probably start putting some money aside, just in case." "In case of what?" I asked, but he just gave me this knowing look, and I realized I already knew the answer. So I did it. I opened a separate Capital One account using my personal email, the one Robert didn't have access to, and set up a small direct deposit, just $100 from each paycheck at first. He never noticed because he only checked the joint account. I also started picking up extra hours whenever the office got backed up on claims, telling Robert I was just being helpful. What he didn't know was that I was pocketing all the overtime. By Christmas, things between us had gotten worse. Robert came home from his company holiday party drunk and furious. He'd been passed over for a promotion again. "Fucking Sebastian," he muttered. "Probably brown-nosing the VP. That's what your kind does, trying to act like you're better than you are." Then he looked at me and said, "You're not promotion material either." I remember standing there in the kitchen, watching him slur his words, and realizing my husband wasn't just cruel. He was painfully average, mediocre at work, bitter at home, and too proud to admit. Once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. January brought more of his jokes. About my cooking. Guess not everyone can make edible pasta. About my friends. Kira's still single because she's impossible to please, like someone else I know. Even about my family. "Your sister's kids are so loud. Guess that runs in your family." That's when I started keeping notes in my phone. Date, time, exact words. I didn't even know why at first. Maybe just to prove to myself that I wasn't imagining it. But it became a habit. Then a lifeline. Proof that I wasn't crazy. In February, I found something worse. A credit card I didn't know existed. Another Capital One, but not in our joint name. I only saw the statements because he'd left his laptop open one night while watching videos. Charges from places like Lucky Star Entertainment and VIP Room. A quick Google search told me they were strip clubs near his office. I didn't confront him. I just doubled what I was saving and started browsing apartments on Zillow during my lunch breaks. By March, word was spreading about possible layoffs at his company. Robert came home edgy, drinking more, snapping quicker. "If I lose my job," he said one night, cracking open a Miller Lite, "you'll finally have to learn what real work is." By March, things at Robert's company were starting to sound shaky. Everyone was whispering about possible layoffs, and he came home every night wound tighter than before, snapping over small things, drinking more Miller Lite, muttering under his breath about idiots in management. "If I lose my job," he said one night, cracking open another can, "you'll finally learn what real work looks like." He said it with a smirk, but his tone had that sharp edge, the kind that wasn't really a joke. That's when something in me finally clicked. I'd spent years shrinking myself to keep the peace, believing his version of love meant control and criticism, but the more miserable he became, the clearer it got that I was the only one holding this marriage together. So, I started planning, quietly. I didn't let on that I'd already built a small safety net for myself. I kept transferring bits of money into that secret account, inch by inch, like a squirrel hiding nuts before winter. April was when his attitude turned from arrogance to panic. He started complaining about how the new kids at work were ruining everything, about how the company didn't appreciate old school loyalty. I just nodded and made dinner, pretending to listen, while inside I was done. Every word out of his mouth was a reminder of how trapped I'd been. He'd built this life where everything revolved around his ego, his job, his frustrations, his image, and I was supposed to orbit quietly around it. Then the layoff happened. I remember the day vividly. It was early May. He came home in the middle of the afternoon, pale and silent, holding a cardboard box filled with his desk junk. His tie was crooked, his hair a mess. He looked defeated for the first time since I'd met him. "I can't believe this," he muttered, dropping the box on the kitchen counter. "After all I've done for that company." I made him coffee, asked if he was okay, played the role I'd learned to play. But inside, something in me had already hardened. Over the next few weeks, he spiraled. He spent his days sulking on the couch, yelling at the TV, drinking beer at noon, and blaming everyone but himself. "Sebastian probably threw me under the bus," he'd grumble. "That little suck-up was gunning for my spot." He talked about applying for new jobs, but I never saw him do it. Instead, he started picking apart everything I did. How I cleaned, how I dressed, how long I spent in the shower. One night, after another pointless argument about wasting money on takeout, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling and realized I couldn't do it anymore. Not one more day of walking on eggshells, not one more conversation where he made me feel small just to make himself feel big. The next morning, while he was at the unemployment office, I transferred the remaining money from our joint account into mine. Every cent I could move legally, I did. Then I packed a single suitcase, called Kira, and told her I was leaving. She didn't even ask why. She just said, "Finally." When Robert came home that evening, the apartment was half empty. I'd taken my clothes, my laptop, and the framed photo of my mom from the hallway table. Everything else I left behind. He called 30 times that night, then 50 the next day. Voicemails ranging from desperate apologies to pure rage. "You're nothing without me," he'd say. Then, minutes later, "Please come home. We can fix this." But I was already gone. I moved into a small one-bedroom place on the edge of town. It's quiet, the kind of quiet that used to scare me, but now feels like peace. I wake up without dread in my chest. I make my own coffee. I pay my own bills. And every day that passes, I feel a little bit more like myself again. Robert, meanwhile, is still unemployed. Word got around that he burned bridges when he left, and nobody's hiring him. Last I heard, he's back living with his mom. Sometimes he still calls. Sometimes he leaves voicemails saying he misses me, but I don't pick up anymore. I waited years for my chance to breathe, and I'm not giving that up for anything. Some days I feel proud of myself for finally leaving. Other days I look in the mirror and wonder if I made everything up. If maybe I was the problem, like Robert always said. This morning, I stood there for 20 minutes, staring at my reflection, trying to see what he saw. That stupid, worthless woman he used to describe. But all I saw was me. A little tired, a little scared, but still standing, still here. Robert, on the other hand, is still exactly where I left him. Unemployed, sulking at his mom's house, calling me over and over like it's still my job to listen. Lately, his newest trick is guilt by proxy. His friends' wives have been messaging me, saying everyone's worried about him, that I'm tearing apart a family. Meanwhile, I'm just trying to build one for myself, even if it's just me for now. Second update. I wasn't planning to post another update this soon, but today rattled me enough that I need to get it out. It started off completely ordinary, just a DoorDash order, pad thai from the place down the street. I was working from home while my new internet setup was being installed. The doorbell rang, and without thinking, I opened it. It wasn't the delivery driver. It was Robert. He stood there holding a cheap bouquet from the grocery store, still wrapped in plastic with the $9.99 sticker staring right at me. He'd lost weight, hadn't shaved, wearing that old UW hoodie he's had since college. And for one awful second, muscle memory almost made me step aside to let him in. Instead, I slammed the door and locked it. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely get the deadbolt to click. "Babe, come on," he said through the door, voice dripping with fake remorse. "I just want to talk. I've changed. I've been going to therapy." Spoiler, he hasn't. Flora told Kira he flat out refused. I didn't say a word. I just sat down on the floor, back pressed against the door, heart hammering in my chest, listening to him run through his usual playlist of manipulation. "I'm sorry about everything. You're overreacting. Remember how good we were together? You're being dramatic. I miss you. You're nothing without me. I love you. You ungrateful bitch." It went on for 45 minutes. My neighbor across the hall, this sweet older lady who waters my plants when I'm out, ended up calling the police. By the time they showed up, Robert was gone. But not before sliding a letter under my door. It's still sitting on my kitchen counter. Feels like a bomb I'm scared to touch. The police were fine. They took a report, told me to call if he comes back, and suggested I install cameras. Already done. Ordered a full set on Amazon after the last round of advice from commenters. Turns out Robert got my new address from Flora. She asked Kira's sister, because she was worried about me. I can't even be mad anymore. Flora's as trapped in his manipulation as anyone else. She genuinely believes her son's the victim. After the police left, I had a small panic attack in the bathroom. Not dramatic or cinematic, just sitting on the toilet lid, scrolling through TikTok. I called out of work for the rest of the day. My boss was understanding. She's been through something similar. It's wild how many people come out of the woodwork with their own stories once you start telling yours. Later that night, Kira came over after her last client. She brought wine and those little frozen appetizers from Trader Joe's that we used to eat in college. We didn't talk about Robert. We just watched bad reality TV and debated whether the weird stain on my ceiling looked like a duck or a rabbit. What's been messing with my head the most is how small Robert looked today. Not physically, though, yeah, he's thinner, but like his whole presence had shrunk. The man who used to tower over me emotionally now seemed ordinary. The shadow he cast in my mind was so much bigger than the real man standing outside my door. Don't get me wrong. I'm still scared. I'm angry. I'm sad. But mostly, I'm exhausted. Tired of jumping how my phone buzzes. Tired of checking the half expecting to see his car. Tired of waiting for the next shoe to drop. Other updates. I changed all my passwords. Again. Finally got my own Netflix account. Goodbye. Roberts continued. Ordered a Ring doorbell. Started therapy. Actual therapy. Not the imaginary kind Robert brags about. And I adopted a cat from the shelter. Her name's Potato. She judges every decision I make with quiet disapproval. And honestly, I love her for it. The weirdest part is how life just keeps going. My dishwasher still needs unloading. My plants still need watering. Potato still demands her litter box cleaned at 7 a.m. sharp. The world doesn't pause just because your ex-husband had a public meltdown on your doorstep. Oh, and my Thai food? The real DoorDash driver eventually showed up. Cold, but edible. I ate it anyway. The letter's still on my counter. Part of me wants to burn it. Part of me wants to read it. Most of me just wants to forget today ever happened. Third update. Yesterday I ran into someone I never expected to see again. Sebastian. Yeah, that's Sebastian. The guy Robert swore had ruined his career. I was at Whole Foods, treating myself to their fancy mac and cheese from the hot bar. Don't judge. When our carts literally bumped. You know that awkward moment when you recognize someone but aren't sure if you should multiply that by 1,000 when it's your ex-husband's supposed nemesis. But Sebastian just smiled, said hi, and asked how I was doing. He seemed normal. Kind, even. We ended up grabbing coffee at the Starbucks inside the store, and what he told me made everything click into place. Robert wasn't laid off. He wasn't replaced by Sebastian. He was fired. Turns out he'd been falsifying expense reports. Those client meetings at strip clubs. He logged them as legitimate business dinners, the team lunches that cost hundreds, solo trips to sports bars where he gambled on games. The company had actually offered him a deal, pay the money back and accept a demotion, but instead he went off on Sebastian, ranting about conspiracies, and making threats serious enough that HR had no choice but to terminate him. Sebastian even showed me screenshots of the messages Robert sent afterward. They were vile, full of slurs, accusations, and threats. Apparently Robert had been telling coworkers that Sebastian and I were having an affair. We'd never even spoken before yesterday. Some days I feel strong, proud even. Other days I crumble into doubt. This morning I caught myself standing in front of the mirror for nearly 20 minutes, trying to see what Robert used to see. The stupid, worthless woman he claimed I was. But I didn't find her. I saw someone tired, yes. Someone scared, maybe a little. But also someone still here. Still breathing. Still moving forward. Robert's still where he's always been. Jobless. Sulking at his mom's place. Pretending to be the victim of the story he created. He's still calling. Still trying to drag me back into the chaos. His latest move. Sending messages through his friends' wives. Begging them to tell me how worried everyone is. How I'm tearing a family apart. Meanwhile, I'm over here learning how to build one. Even if it's just for me. Second update. I honestly wasn't planning on posting another update so soon. But after what happened today, I just need to get it out of my head. It started completely normal. I'd ordered Thai food on DoorDash from the place near my new apartment. I was working from home, waiting for the internet guy to finish the setup. Finally, my doorbell rang. I opened the door without thinking, but it wasn't the delivery guy. It was Robert. He stood there with a bunch of grocery store flowers, still wrapped in plastic, the $9.99 price sticker clear as day. He'd lost weight, his beard was patchy, and he was wearing that old UW hoodie from his college days, the one I used to steal because it smelled like him. For a split second, old habit kicked in. My body almost moved aside to let him in, but then my brain caught up. I slammed the door shut. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely twist the lock into place. "Babe, come on!" He called through the door, voice thick with fake sincerity. "I just want to talk. I've changed. I've been going to therapy." Spoiler. He hasn't. Flora told Kira he flat out refused. I didn't say a word. I just slid down onto the floor, my back pressed against the door, and lit while he cycled through his old... "I'm sorry about everything. You're overreacting. Remember how good we were together? You're being dramatic. I miss you. You're nothing without me. I love you. Grateful bitch." 45 minutes of that. Eventually, my sweet neighbor, the older lady who waters my plants when I'm at work, called the police. By the time they arrived, Robert had already left, but not before shoving a letter under my door. It's still sitting on my kitchen counter. Looks harmless, but it feels like a live bomb. The police did what police usually do. Took a report. Told me to call if he came back. Suggested cameras. I've already got some on the way from Amazon. Thank you to everyone in the comments who recommended them. Apparently, Robert found my address through Flora. She'd asked Kira's sister where I moved, because she was worried. I can't even be angry anymore. Flora's just another casualty of his manipulation. She genuinely believes her son's the wounded one here. After the cops left, I sat in the bathroom for a while. No sobbing, no dramatic meltdown. Just scrolling through TikTok, trying to breathe evenly, trying to feel normal. I called out of work for the rest of the day. My boss was understanding. Turns out she's been through something similar too. It's wild how many people reveal their own stories once you finally tell yours. Later that night, Kira came over. She brought wine and those frozen appetizers from Trader Joe's we used to eat in college. We didn't even mention Robert. We just watched trashy reality TV and debated whether the weird stain on my ceiling looks more like a duck or a rabbit. What hit me hardest wasn't fear. It was how small he looked. Not in size, but in presence. The man who once towered over me emotionally, who made me feel like I'd never be enough, now seemed ordinary. The monster I'd built in my head had shrunk into a man who couldn't even hold his own life together. I'm still scared, still angry, still sad. But mostly, I'm just tired. Tired of flinching whenever my phone lights up. Tired of checking the rearview mirror for his car. Tired of waiting for the next disaster to drop. Small steps forward. Changed all my passwords again. Finally got my own Netflix account. Goodbye, Robert's watch list. Ordered a Ring doorbell camera. Started therapy. Actual therapy. Not the imaginary kind he pretends he's doing. And I adopted a cat. Her name's Potato. She's tiny, judgmental, and already acts like she owns the place. Life feels strange now. Not good. Not bad. Just real. My dishwasher still needs unloading. My plants still need watering. Potato still demands breakfast at exactly 6:45 every morning. The world doesn't stop just because your ex-husband has a meltdown on your doorstep. Oh, and my Thai food? The real DoorDash driver eventually showed up. Cold, but edible. I ate it anyway. The letter's still on my counter. Part of me wants to toss it in the sink and set it on fire. Part of me wants to open it. Most of me just wants to pretend today never happened. Third update. Yesterday, I went to Whole Foods to treat myself. Fancy mac and cheese from the hot bar. Comfort food, no judgment. And then I literally bumped carts with him. Sebastian. Yeah, that's Sebastian. The guy Robert blamed for everything. You know that awkward moment when you see someone you half know, and you're not sure. Multiply that by 1,000 when it's your ex-husband's former coworker, the one he swore ruined his career. But Sebastian just smiled and asked how I'd been. He didn't seem awkward at all. We ended up grabbing coffee at the Starbucks inside the store. What he told me? It explained everything. Robert wasn't laid off. He wasn't replaced by Sebastian. He was fired. Apparently, he'd been caught falsifying expense reports. Those so-called client dinners at strip clubs, filed as business expenses. Those team lunches that cost hundreds. Solo trips to sports bars where he gambled on games. And here's the wild part. The company actually tried to give him a way out. They offered to let him pay the money back and take a demotion, but instead, he completely lost it. Went on a tirade about how Sebastian was out to get him. Made threats so intense, HR had no choice but to terminate him. Sebastian even showed me screenshots of the messages Robert sent afterward. They were disgusting. Slurs, threats, paranoia, all of it. And apparently Robert had been telling people we were having an affair. Me and Sebastian, two people who had literally never spoken until that coffee. When I left the store, I sat in my car for a long time, just breathing. Not crying, not shaking, just breathing. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel crazy. I didn't feel small. I just felt free.